My parents kicked me out at 17 years. Later, they begged for my help. Hey Reddit, never thought I'd post here, but lately my story's been swirling around, and I need to get it out. Maybe someone out there will understand. I'm 28 now, but the story starts when I was 17. We lived in a boring suburb, the kind with perfect lawns and nosy neighbors. My parents, Mark and Linda, looked normal on the outside, but inside our house, everything was about rules and appearances. I was the good kid. Quiet, got good grades, never made trouble. My little sister Sophie was just a kid, always watching with those big brown eyes. Junior year, I realized I was gay. I told my best friend Sarah first. She hugged me and said she'd always have my back. I was terrified but stupidly hopeful when I told my parents. I remember standing in the kitchen, hands shaking so hard I could barely get the words out. My mom's face turned to stone, and my dad just stared at the wall, jaw clenched. My mom said, "Cold as ice, we can't have this in our house. You have until morning to leave." I thought it was a threat, a scare tactic, but they meant every word. That night, I packed a bag in silence. Sophie slipped a note under my door. "I love you. Don't forget me." I still have it hidden in my wallet. Sarah's family let me crash on their couch. Leaving my home before sunrise, I felt numb, shocked, betrayed, and terrified. I stood at their doorstep in the cold, wondering if my life was over before it even started. The first night away from home was the longest of my life. I barely slept, curled up under a borrowed blanket on Sarah's floor, the ceiling spinning above me. Every time the house creaked, I'd jolt awake, convinced my parents were coming to drag me back. Maybe to forgive me, maybe to scream at me all over again. Neither happened. Sarah's mom, Mrs. Connors, made me tea the next morning and acted like nothing was weird. She just said, "Honey, you're safe here," and pushed a plate of toast toward me. That simple kindness almost broke me. I had to fight not to cry in front of everyone. School was hell. Rumors spread fast in small towns, and by the end of the week, half my classmates were whispering behind my back. A few called me slurs when teachers weren't listening. I started skipping lunch, eating alone in empty classrooms, trying to stay invisible. The Connors did what they could. They offered their pull-out couch and a spare key, but I could see the strain. Money was tight for them. Sarah's dad lost his job the year before, so I tried not to be a burden. I got a job bussing tables at a diner, working late into the night and doing homework when I could. I learned to live out of a backpack, school books, a toothbrush, Sophie's note. I called my sister from payphones, praying she'd pick up. Sometimes she'd whisper, "I miss you. Are you okay?" I'd lie and say yes, even though I wasn't. I tried not to hate my parents, but every night I replayed their words, wondering what I'd done to deserve this. There's a loneliness in that kind of rejection you can't describe, a cold that seeps into your bones. But I survived somehow, one day at a time. And even though I was scared, I promised myself I'd never give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. The first few months blurred together: school, work, exhaustion. There were nights I crashed at the Connors, other nights I stayed at the diner after close, pretending I had somewhere else to be. Sometimes Sarah's parents argued about me, but never in front of me. I overheard her mom say, "He's just a kid, Tom," and it made me feel even smaller. Money was always tight. I saved every tip, skipped meals, and learned to make a $5 bill last a week. Sometimes I went to bed hungry, stomach rumbling, thinking about home-cooked meals I'd never taste again. My grades slipped, but I scraped by. One teacher, Mr. Brooks, who taught English, noticed I wasn't myself. After class one day, he pulled me aside. "You don't have to tell me what's going on," he said quietly. "But if you need help, or just someone to listen, I'm here." That offer meant more than he could know. He started giving me extra time on assignments, letting me nap in his classroom when I looked half dead. I didn't trust adults easily anymore, but he never pushed. He just showed up. A few months in, I finally rented a room above the garage of an older woman named Mrs. Patterson. She was tough as nails and didn't ask questions, just gave me a key and a list of chores in exchange for low rent. Her house always smelled like cinnamon and cats. I started to feel a tiny bit of control return to my life. I was still lonely, so lonely, but I was surviving and even learning how to laugh again sometimes, especially with Sarah. My world was small and fragile, but it was finally mine. For the first time in my life, I realized I could build something for myself, even if it would never look like the life my parents had pictured. Over time, things got a little less bleak. It wasn't easy, but I started to let people in again. Sarah stayed by my side through everything, but I also made a couple of new friends at work. One of the waitresses, Jess, was older, already in college, full of wild stories and honest advice. She noticed I was always tired, always on edge. One night, after closing, Jess sat with me in the empty diner. "You don't have to carry all this alone, you know," she said, lighting a cigarette she'd half-heartedly hidden from the boss. "Bad families happen. Doesn't mean you're broken." No one had ever said it to me like that. I didn't know if I believed her, but hearing it made the world feel a little less heavy. Mrs. Patterson, my landlady, was gruff but kind in her way. She'd leave leftovers on the counter with a sticky note, "Eat this or you'll starve," and lecture me about changing the cat litter. Slowly, her kitchen table became my safe place, a place where nobody judged, just asked how my day was. It wasn't family in the traditional sense, but it was something I could hold on to. School was still tough. Some kids avoided me. A few made snide comments. But there were others who just quietly started sitting with me, as if deciding I'd passed some kind of invisible test. I realized not everyone was like my parents. Some people were decent, even if they had no idea what I'd been through. The biggest lesson was learning to trust again, even if only a little. I guarded my heart, but I also let myself believe, for the first time, that my future could be different from my past. The pain of what happened at home never left, but it stopped being the whole story. Step by step, I was starting to build something real. Not just survival, actual living. Senior year snuck up on me. Suddenly, everyone was talking about college, careers, and futures. For a while, I couldn't imagine a future. I was just trying to get through each day. But Sarah wouldn't let me give up. She dragged me to guidance counselor meetings and helped me fill out scholarship applications. Sometimes I'd catch myself imagining what it would be like to start over somewhere new, where no one knew my history. Graduation felt surreal. My parents didn't show up, not that I expected them to. Sophie sent me a text, though, a blurry photo of a cupcake with congrats written in messy icing. I cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes, then went out and smiled for Sarah's family's cameras. That summer, I worked as much as possible, saving every dollar for college. Jess, my friend from the diner, convinced me to take a weekend off for one last, bad decision before we all scattered. We drove to the beach, slept under the stars, and talked about everything and nothing. For the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. College was my escape. I got into a state school on a patchwork of scholarships and work study. Moving into the dorms, surrounded by strangers, was terrifying but freeing. Nobody here knew my story. I could decide who I wanted to be. But leaving town didn't magically erase the past. I still jumped at loud noises. I still checked my phone every night for a message from Sophie. I still felt that ache when I saw other students with their families on move-in day. The wounds were healing, but the scars stayed. Yet, I was moving forward, slowly, awkwardly, stubbornly. And with every day that passed, the life I was building felt a little bit more like my own. College was both terrifying and exhilarating. I arrived with everything I owned in 2 duffel bags, trying to act like I belonged there. The first week, I barely slept, partly nerves, partly excitement. My roommate, Jason, was loud, messy, and endlessly curious. He noticed my old sketchbook and demanded to see my drawings. Instead of teasing, he just nodded. "Dude, you're really good. Ever think of art school?" No one had ever said something like that to me before. Classes were tough at first. I felt behind, like I was always catching up. But slowly, I found my rhythm. I signed up for a late-night shift at the campus library and joined an LGBTQ+ student group, half expecting judgment. Instead, I found a group of people who laughed loudly, welcomed me instantly, and didn't care about my past. They introduced me to coffee dates, movie nights, and the possibility of real friendship. One night, at a poetry reading, I met Alex. He was charming, a little awkward, with a crooked smile that made me feel seen. We started as friends, sharing long walks and late-night study sessions, slowly turning into something more. Dating was scary. I kept waiting for something to go wrong. But Alex was patient, gentle, never rushing me. For the first time since everything with my parents, I started to feel safe. Over the holidays, I stayed on campus or visited Sarah's family. They had become my chosen family, always making room for me at their table. I sent postcards to Sophie, hoping she still read them. I realized that happiness wasn't a destination. It was these moments strung together. I was learning to trust, to love, to let hope back in. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Years went by faster than I expected. I graduated, got a decent job at a nonprofit doing community outreach, moved into a tiny apartment with Alex, and built a life that finally felt steady. I still had nightmares sometimes, old echoes of fear and rejection, but with Alex beside me, mornings felt brighter. Sarah and I stayed close, texting every week, visiting when we could. Sophie and I kept up a careful thread of contact, mostly through quick DMs and occasional postcards. She was in college now herself, growing into her own life, and our bond, though strained, never broke. Life was normal, almost happy even. I went years without hearing from my parents. Honestly, I told myself I was okay with that. My therapist, because yes, I finally started going, said it was healthy to set boundaries with people who'd hurt me, even if they were family. Then, one chilly afternoon in October, a letter showed up in my mailbox. The handwriting was familiar, sharp, and rushed. My mom's. My heart pounded. I stood on the porch, letter in hand, for 10 minutes before I could make myself open it. Inside were just a few lines. We're sorry for how things ended. Your father is sick. We need help. Please call. No, I love you. No explanation. No real apology. But the words rattled around my brain for days. All those wounds I'd worked so hard to heal began to ache again. Alex found me staring at the letter late at night. He read it, then looked at me gently. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. You owe them nothing. But the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. All I knew was the past wasn't as far away as I thought. For days, I walked around in a fog. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Old habits, fear, guilt, hope came rushing back. I read my mom's letter over and over, searching for something more, some hidden sign of love or regret. But it was just what it was, a plea for help, not an apology. I talked to Sarah first. She listened, then shook her head. They hurt you, and now they're reaching out because they need something. You're not a bad person if you say no. But I could see the worry in her eyes. She knew how deep my scars ran. That night, Alex sat with me on our tiny couch, holding my hand. If you want to see them, I'll be with you. If you decide not to, I'll support you. But promise me you won't do it out of guilt. His words meant more than I could say. I tried to remember everything I'd learned about boundaries and self-worth. My parents had thrown me out, left me to fend for myself when I needed them most. Did I owe them anything now? Was forgiveness possible, or even healthy? And if I helped, would I just open old wounds, make myself vulnerable all over again? I called Sophie, hoping for clarity. Her voice was soft, older now. Dad is sick, she said, and Mom's lost without you. But it's not fair for them to just ask for help after everything. She hesitated. I want us all together again, but I want you to be okay even more. For the first time, I realized forgiveness isn't just about letting someone back in. It's about protecting yourself, too. I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew whatever I chose, it had to be for me, not them. A week later, I made my decision. I called my mom. Her voice was thin, strained, but she sounded almost relieved. Thank you for calling, honey, she said, as if we'd just spoken yesterday. I agreed to visit them with Alex by my side. Walking up to my childhood home was surreal. The house looked smaller, older, and the garden was neglected. My dad was there, thinner, grayer, sitting in an armchair, oxygen tank hissing softly. My mom hovered nearby, wringing her hands. The air was thick with things unsaid. For a few minutes, we talked about nothing, the weather, Sophie's studies, the price of groceries. Then my mom finally said it. We made mistakes. We were scared. We thought we were doing what was right, but we lost you. I'm sorry. We both are. My dad's eyes filled with tears, but he just nodded. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand why it took so long, why I'd had to suffer just to be myself. Instead, I said quietly, you broke me. You left me alone when I needed you most. I survived, but I can't forget it. My mom reached for my hand, trembling. Can you ever forgive us? We need you now, but we miss you. We always have. Alex squeezed my shoulder. I realized forgiveness wasn't a single choice. It was a journey. I could help, maybe even heal some old wounds, but I couldn't erase what happened. I'll help where I can, I said, but I have to protect myself. Things can't go back to the way they were. I need honesty and respect this time, or I walk away. There were tears, awkward hugs, and promises to try again. It wasn't the reunion I dreamed of as a kid, but maybe it was enough, a start, at least. After that day, everything felt different, but not in the way I once imagined. Helping my parents wasn't easy. My dad's illness grew worse, and I did what I could. Hospital visits, helping with paperwork, talking with doctors. I set clear boundaries, no more hiding, no more guilt trips, no pretending the past didn't happen. My mom slipped up sometimes, apologizing too much or not enough, but we kept trying. Alex stood by me, reminding me to take care of myself, to step back when I needed space. Some days I left my parents' house exhausted, raw, but other times we managed a laugh or a real conversation. Sophie visited when she could. She hugged me tight and said, "I'm proud of you for not giving up on yourself, or them." Forgiveness turned out to be complicated, not a single act but 100 little choices. Picking up the phone, saying no when I needed to, listening without letting old wounds bleed open again. I didn't forget the pain, but I stopped letting it define me. In time, I saw my parents for who they were: flawed, scared, limited, but also capable of change, if only a little. Maybe they were never meant to be the parents I wanted, but that didn't mean I couldn't build my happiness, my own family, on my terms. So, if you're reading this and wrestling with your own family's failures, know this: you are not the sum of their mistakes. You get to choose your boundaries, your healing, and your life. Forgiveness is your gift to yourself, not something you owe anyone else. I have a life now that I'm proud of, a partner who loves me, friends who've become family, a little sister who never stopped believing in me. My parents? They're just people in my story, not the authors of it. And for the first time, I feel free.